Questions of Doom.
Hello and welcome back to another Questions of Doom. In this series, as ever, I attempt to answer questions that you send my way using the archaeosoup@gmail.com email address, as displayed on the YouTube channel homepage, but as you'll also see at the end of this video. In answering these questions by video, it is my fond hope that the answer is not only useful to the person who has asked the question, but also anyone else out there who may be wondering the same thing. Now, today's Question of Doom is a very festive video, and the reason for this is because I was sent a simply irresistible question a couple of days ago. I was working on the In Focus Oracle Bones, and when I saw this question I thought, what's more Christmassy, Oracle Bones or this particular question? So I couldn't resist answering this one at this time of year. So we'll return to the Oracle Bones in January. Anyway, here we go. The question goes like this. Dear Mr. Soup, I have no one else, or rather I know of no one else who might be able to help with this very particular question. I have been contracted to do an archaeological investigation within Santa's grotto. This is a compound in Lapland. How exciting, right? You see, Chris Kringle will be building a new wing to his toy factory in the new year to enable his team of elves to start developing new and exciting toys for girls and boys around the world. Before this building can go ahead, there needs to be an archaeological evaluation of the proposed development location. It is located in the northwestern portion of the compound on the site of an old candy cane and wooden toy production line. Can you advise me on what I might expect during the course of this dig? If you could give me some hints for the desktop assessment of the site, I would be greatly in your debt. Merry Christmas and cheers, Marion. So you can see what I mean. It was an interesting question to receive, and I'm amazed actually that Marion's been allowed to dig on site. Actually, you know, Father Christmas is famously protective of the whereabouts of his workshop, but also as well, actually, frankly, letting human beings in. It's usually just elves, him and his family. But anyway, I do in fact have some tips and thoughts for this particular project for you, Marion. Well, they are as follows. I've made a series of notes, so I'm going to be referring to these throughout the video. So first of all, unfortunately, aerial photography is prohibited. Santa's compound is actually protected by international law, so it doesn't actually appear on Google Earth or actually in earlier air surveys. So sadly, the photography is out of the window. To this day, photography of the area is prohibited, but I've actually managed to locate a publicity painting which shows the entrance to the main claw's residence. So this was released by by Santa's, or rather with Santa's permission, a couple of years ago. The layout of the rest of Santa's compound is a closely guarded secret. However, because I asked very nicely, I was afforded access to maps from the 1770s and the mid-1800s, which focus on the northwestern corner of the vast compound. Incidentally, actually, the actual extent of Santa's grotto workshop compound is also a very closely guarded secret. So I was able to find maps just showing that little bit. The rest of it is not was very heavily edited and redacted. I wasn't allowed to see those bits, but these appear to hint that the area of interest, the area that you're wanting to excavate, Marion, the wooden toy and candy cane factory, was actually built in two stages. The first was built in the late 18th century. This was the wooden toy factory. It's actually a C-shaped workshop, presumably different wings performing different functions. And this was expanded in the mid-19th century, so in the mid-1800s, to accommodate the candy cane production line. And this was due to the rise in popularity actually of the candy cane. So Santa was, well, as he is today, he was back then with the times. He knew exactly what was coming and was prepared to build factories to accommodate production. Now these are actually, both of these different stages, these different elements of the factory are likely to have been built using differing materials. So whether these are brick, stone or wood, this difference should actually be observable. So I suppose that's the first thing that comes out of the desk-based assessment, is that you should actually be able to observe these different phases. It might be quite nice to see if you can confirm the different phases of this factory compound. Maybe there are more than 2 phases. I've only actually been able to find 2 maps which cover a span of 50 years, so who knows, that's something for you to look out for, Marion. The function of the building, actually, though, quite pleasingly, was confirmed, or is confirmed, by an inventory of a warehouse within the factory, which was taken in August 1910. This appears to show vast quantities of raw materials, component parts, paints, sugar, and syrup. And I have a copy of that inventory just here. It's as follows: Warehouse 3B inventory, 3rd of August 1910. Pine wood 3,000 tons, oak wood 2,000 tons, prepared soldier arms 30,000, prepared soldier legs 31,408, prepared wagon wheels 59,420, prepared wagon axles 7,428, prepared doll arms, legs, bodies 60,408. Paint, various colours, 90,319 tins. Brushes, various sizes, 2,439. Sugar, 50,000 tons. This is presumably for the candy cane part of the factory. Cherry syrup, 40,506 gallons, and prepared candy canes, 138,582 of those. So really quite a vast warehouse inventory there, but also a vast capacity for making these products, these toys and sweets for girls and boys. Now, it's signed by Aldern Proudier, presumably the elf who was in charge of looking after the warehouse. But that's actually quite a nice little bit of an insight into what sort of things were being stored on site. So that, again, that might help you with your investigation, Marion. This is actually a timely and really rather ominous inventory because of the quantity of highly flammable materials listed. This actually foreshadows the destruction of the building. So, you know, you've got the paint, there's the sugar burns like no one's business. In fact, actually, there's a storehouse here in the northeast in Newcastle, which was bombed in the Second World War, which burned for days, apparently with a purple hue. Because of all the fat and sugar and other stuff that was in there. It was a lovely smell in the air, but obviously all that stuff wasn't edible afterwards. Cherry syrup, prepared candy canes, and of course all the wood as well. Very, very highly flammable. Now, I've actually found a letter from an Elvish resident of the building to his wife, dated the 23rd of November 1910. This alludes to a fire the night before. I have a typewritten translation, which is as follows. I can just find that. Here we are. 23rd of November 1910. Dearest Mode, let me reassure you that I am fine following last night's fire at the residence. As you know, we sleep above the rooms where we work, the heat of the day rising to welcome us in the evening. Unfortunately, Conap, the elf turn, left his candle burning at the end of yesterday's shift, and a stray spark must have flew amongst the paints and varnishes. I understand you could see the fire from the village. I am sorry if you have been worried. Thankfully, the fire did not touch the reserve toy stores. Soon, the annual effort will be done, and I will see you and little Pertwee once more. Until then, my love, Tarnar. It's worthwhile actually pointing out, it's quite nice, this letter, because it hints at several things which aren't immediately obvious on other information. For example, the map that we found. You've got, well, first of all, the lovely Elvish convention of the ear tugs, the 3 V's, a little bit like human kisses, and that's quite sweet. But also, actually, he makes direct reference to the fact that they're living above the workshop, some of these elves, presumably the shift workers who are working in the factory. So this is something which, again, you might want to look out for, Marion, is evidence of residence, actually, of the residence. There may be evidence of personal artifacts, maybe other letters, perhaps, that might be found amongst the debris from the factory. So that's worthwhile considering. I've also actually found a painting, an artist's rendition of the night of the fire, which, well, as Tarnar here says, could be seen from the elf village just up the valley. So clearly quite a dramatic night. But it's nice to have that letter, though, confirming the events which led actually to the factory ultimately being abandoned. Yeah. Now, most interesting of all, it seems that Santa actually did permit limited archaeological investigation of the area in the 1950s. A series of test pits and elements of field walking led to a small-scale excavation. This revealed several interesting features. These are recorded in the cross-section produced by Sir Cornelius Tursthwaite, who was actually mentor to our very own Indiana Bones. And this was produced in 1952. So I have a copy of that as well. Let me just find that. Now this actually could be very useful to you, Marion, in terms of helping you to plan how you go about, well, an excavation, but also how you go about wanting to, deciding on where you want to put in your excavation if you do one. Notice on Cornelius's cross-section here, you have at the top permafrost and ice, which presumably by this point had been scraped back somewhat, and the remains of what looks like a fairly recent reindeer shelter as well, probably temporary, for the main reindeer abode is elsewhere on the compound. Now this is the interesting feature, or one of the interesting features actually, is you have candy cane melt layers. This is presumably where the raw ingredients, or indeed the finished candy canes, had melted in the fire and had frozen into these sort of strata, this sort of stratigraphy, but made up of very pleasing red and white, sugary, shards, I suppose. These sort of these big flat pools of sugar. So both above and below the massive burning event which was evidenced in Cornelius's cross-section, we have these candy cane melt layers. So that might be worthwhile also bearing in mind. That might actually add to the cost of the excavation, actually having to get through that I imagine fairly dense layer. Then again, it might be quite friable. It might actually shatter in the cold. Who knows? Below that, we seem to, or rather Cornelius seems to have confirmed also the presence of the wooden toy element of the factory. You have toy parts which seem to be above, in his cross-section anyway, blocks of unworked timber. So again, we've got confirmation of the different activities happening on the site. And we also have the rapid thaw and freeze during the fire. This sort of, presumably the ice and snow around the factory melted and then gushed into a hole which had opened up, and then froze quite rapidly. So we have that sort of flow there. But most interesting of all is actually what he's called a fortress era lining. This sort of stepped lining, and also the lining at the bottom and at the side of this ditch that he seems to have found. Now the ditch, now I'll just have to refer to my notes here. Yeah, that's it, yes, the fortress era lining. I found this very strange actually when I was doing my research, but apparently few people know that in the late first millennium AD, Santa's workshop was actually a highly prized seat of power and presence. Many sought to take presents by force, but Santa and his community of elves constructed a mighty fortress to protect themselves. Gradually it became clear that Santa delivered presents to his friends and enemies alike, spreading goodwill and festive joy. Force was not necessary to attain them. So this feature might actually be evidence of the defensive ditch around the fortress, which at one point was necessary apparently to protect Santa and the presents. So the factory must have in the fire, the melt must have opened up an element of the ditch, and everything just sort of fell into this fortress ditch. This warrants further investigation, perhaps even an interview with the big man himself. He may remember. He's a very old man after all. He may remember elements of this ditch, and actually, perhaps again, part of your research agenda for this particular project might be to actually see where that ditch goes. Try and maybe find the corner or that side of the fortress by tracing the outline of the ditch. It seems to be quite a distinctive stepped ditch with a reinforced base there made out of stone slabs. So yeah, probably well worth looking into. Now, that's actually unfortunately all I could find for you, Marion, on Santa's compound. But I think there's quite enough to be going on with there. We have details of what from people living on the site. We have details of what was happening on the site, and a little bit of a story as to how things transpired in that rather dramatic year 1910 to make the site what it is today. This sort of very interesting multi-layered excavation or investigation, which may lead to an excavation in the northwestern corner of Santa's grotto, so or Santa's compound. So remarkable, absolutely remarkable that you're getting a chance to do this, and hopefully you find this information interesting and useful in your research, Marion. I'll of course forward it over to you. I'll send everything along with links to relevant databases as well. And I suppose, yeah, good luck with your investigation next year. I suppose we all look forward to seeing what this new wing to Santa's enterprise brings forth into the world. Wonderful, wonderful. So there you go. Hopefully this festive video has been interesting and useful to you, Marion, and also anyone else out there who's wondering just what it's like to plan an excavation in Santa's compound. Nonetheless, as I'm sure you've gathered by now, I would love to take the time to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful time over the next few days, and as for us at Archaeosoup Towers, we have quite a fair amount planned in terms of relaxing, that is, and therefore you can expect perhaps an Archaeoscoop video, and also in time for New Year our rundown of 2013, so our top news stories from throughout the year. Nonetheless, as I say, hopefully you've enjoyed this actually fairly interesting little case study as how you go about setting up an excavation, especially in a strange place, and hopefully you're all going to have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. Until next time, as ever, please do take care. Bye bye, and Merry Christmas.